Hi everyone. So today we're going to talk about building basic shapes or primitive graphics in processing. And for most of you, this is probably going to be your first program that you make. And so we're going to show you actually how simple it is. We're also going to show the reference. So if you do get into trouble or if you want to find more information on different functions within processing, how easy it is to get to that and how helpful it is. We're also going to talk about color, fill color, stroke, and stroke weight. Okay, so to get started, I'm going to open up a processing window that I got here. So I got a basic sketch going. And to show you actually how simple this is, we're going to build our first program with only one line of code. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the function called ellipse. And you'll see here when I type that out, it turns blue. So that's recognized by processing that it's a function within it. So there's built-in functions that do things within processing that makes it easy to use. So it knows that this is something, and it's expecting a few different things. When we talk about functions, it's like a little machine. And so we're going to give it a command, and it's expecting sort of four things from us in this. The first thing it wants to know is, all right, I'll build you an ellipse. Where do you want me to put it? So we have to give it some coordinate positionings for that. And the next thing it wants to know is, well, how big do you want it? And those will be the next ones. So there'll be four parameters that we give this function. So starting off, I'm going to give it 50 and 50. So the x, so saying going 50 over and then 50 down. And then I'm going to give it a width of 25 and a height of 25. So there's no circle function, but by giving it the same radius here, we can make it this way. Okay, so then I end it with the statement terminator, the semicolon. So this is the period, the punctuation, to let it know that I'm done. And when I hit the run button, which is the play button here, the little triangle, it should compile code, and here we go. Here's an amazing white circle built to the center of the screen. Okay, so one line of code builds this. It builds a window out, it generates a graphic with inside of it, which is pretty amazing stuff. Now there's some default stuff that's happening here, so that we can see that the fill color by default is white. If we don't tell it to do anything else, that's what it decides to do. It also has a window size of 100 by 100 pixels. That's why we had a 50 by 50 for our positioning of the ellipse to get it into the center of the window. The other default is that it has this sort of gray, neutral gray background. So we're going to change these things, and because it's a pretty small window, it's not the most dynamic of graphics, but you got to start somewhere. So I'm going to close that window down, and the next function I'm going to give it here is going to be size. And so you'll see that the program is sequential. So the order of where you put functions is going to be important. So the first thing I want to do is say, hey, build a window and let's make it 400 by 400 pixels wide. Okay, so now if I leave everything the same, I'll get something similar, but you'll see that I'll just generate a bigger window, but it's also moved. It's no longer in the center because these numbers are different. So you can see that for processing, the coordinate system works the 0 point, 0 for your width or the x position, your 0 for the y, your height position starts in the upper left corner. Okay? And it moves in a positive direction. X moves in a positive direction to the right, and Y moves into a positive direction going down. So 50 over in the X, and then 50 down gets us here. So let's change that. Let's change some positioning now that we have a different window size. Close this again, and let's put it in, we're going to put it in the center of, so 200 for our X, and then let's just bring it down slightly, let's say 60, and we're going to give it a bigger width and height, so we're going to say 100 by 100, so now we can really see it. Okay, and here it is again. Okay, you can also see that there's a stroke, a 1 pixel black stroke around it. That's the other default that processing has. Okay, easy enough. So now we've kind of moved it around the screen. We have a different window size. let's try, well, here's a few things. So one of the things is if you don't give it the right amount of parameters, so let's say if our size function, if I only give it one parameter, I'm going to take this down, I'm just going to say 400, okay? And if I try to compile it, see, all right, it highlighted this function. It's telling me something's wrong. And if I go down here into the bottom of the window where there's the sort of output, it says that this method's size, it's expecting two things, two integers, and so it doesn't work. So I only gave it one, says something's wrong here. So definitely want something back. So if something's not working right in your code, the window output does give you some glimpse into what's happening. So the other thing, let's make another error. I'm going to take the semicolon off. Again, I try to compile it, and it's giving me another thing. It's saying, there's a syntax error. It's missing a semicolon. It knows it right away, and it gives me some other text down here. And it shows that it's sequential. So it didn't get the semicolon here. It went right to an ellipse. Not supposed to happen that way. So this needs to be back here. So if you make mistakes with your program, there's an easy way that it kind of error checks for you. And these are the way to kind of find out what's wrong so you can go back in and fix it. Okay. All right, so let's build another graphic. Another simple shape is going to be a triangle. So I'm going to put that in. Again, it turns blue, so processing is happy there. And the triangle is going to expect, it's essentially 3 points that get connected. So it's going to need a bunch of parameters here. Let me try this out. Let's try, we'll put it here, kind of in the same place. You see that I have these commas in between the parameters. Now this has white space here in the ellipse. If you look at it, there's white space in between some of these. There's white space not in between some of these. That doesn't matter. It's not so strict that it's not going to recognize it. As long as you have the comma, it'll be fine with it. So it's just a matter of what's more legible to you. So let me get another number here. I'm going to go all the way over and all the way down. So we have a point on top, we'll have a point on the bottom right, and then a point on the bottom left. So we'll do that, and then we'll do 20 and 380 this way. Okay, and let's see what we get. I'm going to compile this, and there we go. And you also see here that the order of operations, so it is incredibly sequential. So the size, it builds the window first, it builds the ellipse, and then it builds the triangle. So the triangle sits on top of, it sort of blocks out part of that ellipse. Okay, so it's kind of stacking them in order. All right, so we have the defaults here. Let's change these. Let's try to deal with color here a little bit. Or actually here at first, let me close this down and hit the stop button. And so let me look at triangle. So if I highlight the word triangle here in the code, and if I go into help, and find and reference, it'll open up the web page for, actually this is going to be loaded. It's not the website itself, it's actually when you download and install processing, this is actually within the contents itself. So here it gives me the reference, and it gives me the triangle, it gives me the name, it gives me an example of how that's working, it gives me a description, some syntax of how many parameters it's expecting, and what those are for. Okay. So a great way to kind of figure out if something's not working, a great way to find out what things are expecting, how to do things, and kind of growing from there. So be sure that you take advantage of that. So the next thing let's do some color. So what I'm going to do is let's get a fill color. And if you use Adobe products, the fill is the interior of the shape. The stroke is going to be the border that goes around the shape, and that you can also do the weighting of the stroke as well, so how thick that line is that creates that border. So it's similar names. So we have a fill function, and we're going to give it some values here. So now ellipse was strange. It's the shapes are very strict in the number of parameters it's expecting, and if you don't put those in, it breaks. So we saw that with size as well. Fill is strange, where it can take anywhere from 1 to 4, and it can do something with it. So if I only give it one value, let's say I give it a 0, it's going to be, well, let's see what happens. I hit, let me compile it, and everything turns black. Okay, so 0 is black. Everything is turned off. 255 then is white. So if I give it just a single parameter to the fill function, it's a grayscale. Okay, so it's a single channel. If I give it 2, it's going to be grayscale plus an alpha. If I give it 3, the default color mode is RGB here in processing. So the red channel, green channel, blue channel will be the 3 parameters, and those will be values from 0 to 255. And then there's the 4th. You can also give it an alpha in the RGB mode as well. So let's give it some color. So we'll go 255, which is full red, fully on. So everything's flooded for that. 0 for green and 0 for blue. And let's give it an alpha. So I'm going to say so a 0 alpha is fully transparent. 255 is fully opaque. Let's make this. Let's give it a 100, and we'll see what happens here. So we'll be able to see some of the stroke values between it. Okay, so kind of a pink color. Now, if I wanted to change, that's for the ellipse and the triangle. So it's once it's called, that color is used for everything that's built after it. If I want to change the fill for the triangle, I have to put another fill function in. So let's do that. Let's do a similar thing. We're going to give it, but we're going to give it a higher, sort of a more opaque alpha. And let's see how that looks. And there it is. Okay, so we can see that the triangle is appearing now more red, and the ellipse is more pink. So the other thing that we can do is going to be stroke and stroke weight. So let's do that. So in front of the ellipse, let's give a stroke color. So we're going to do stroke, and let's make it. Let's make it blue, I guess. So we'll go 0 and 0, and the last one will be, well, let's give it just 100. And so that'll be the stroke for everything. Let's take a look at that. We got a light blue sort of stroke outline for this. And we can affect our stroke weight too, so that'll be the next function. So we'll go stroke. So look how this happens. Everything is lowercase until I get to the second word. So this is kind of a programming convention. It's called Camelback notation. So I'll hit weight. So it recognizes that. And this is in pixels. Let's give it a 5 pixel. Let's see if that is recognizable, if that's big enough. There it is. Awesome. So we built a simple graphic. We built 2. We positioned them on the screen. We've given them some color. We've changed those values. We've given some stroke as well, and we were able to see that the reference has a lot of information in it for you to check, and you can get directly into it through the program itself. The other thing maybe you can check out too, there's a tool, color selector, and if I click on that, this is sort of a familiar interface here. It can give you the different color values. Here's your RGB values for the color that you select, and so that can help you choose different color schemes from there. Okay? Hope this helps, and we'll see you guys soon.